Time to introduce our keynote speaker. This man is a serial entrepreneur with several startup companies working heavily in the creation and expansion of a parallel economy to support conservative businesses from leftist attacks. He is the creator and co-host of Real Man TV, an online series that focuses on resurrecting the art of manliness, and is also one of the stars of Boom America with Kevin Harrington, the original shark from the hit show Shark Tank. He first became famous as the CEO of the Silent Partner Marketing Agency, which was dubbed America's most patriotic marketing agency by Fox and Friends. He made international news when the media found out about his controversial employee vetting program called the Snowflake Test, which other companies can use to ensure that no snowflakes end up working there. And last year, on July 4th, trusting that God will always provide, he and his wife used their life savings to acquire Law Enforcement Today, as well as several other assets, to create the largest pro-police news outlet in the world. He also sits on the board of advisors for Deliver Fund, a 501c3 that destroys sex trafficking networks by training, equipping, and advising law enforcement officers. Here to talk about the lessons he's learned along the way and how we can apply them in our lives and on the campaign trail, please give a warm CTRA welcome to Kyle Reyes.
Good afternoon, everybody. So this is your one and only trigger warning. If you're easily offended, now would be a spectacular time for you to leave. I want to open up by sharing with all of you my pronouns, which are FJB and Let's Go Brandon. All right, so I want to tell you about Father Charlie. So I flew back here from Vegas yesterday. I was in Las Vegas for the last week for SHOT Show, the largest firearm show in the world.
My nephew's there.
Outstanding. If your nephew has lots of money, tell him to advertise with us. So every time I'm out in Vegas, I get together with Father Charlie. Now, Father Charlie is an old Air Force veteran. He's now about to celebrate 50 years as a Catholic priest. His church is the only church in the world that's in a casino. So Father Charlie and I always get together when I go out there. And Father Charlie told me a story that just made my heart leap. He was on a plane and he was flying from Vegas to New Jersey, where he's originally from, and they hit some extremely severe turbulence. And the woman sitting next to him grabs his hand and squeezes tight, and she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And he goes, "Oh, ma'am, don't worry about it. I'm a Catholic priest." And she goes, "How are you so calm right now? You're so peaceful." And he said, "Well, ma'am, here's the truth. I was actually an Air Force pilot for years. So I'm a veteran, and these planes, they are built extraordinarily well, right? And these pilots, they're trained unbelievably well." And she's still looking nervous. He said, "You ever be driving down the road and you hit a bunch of potholes?" She said, "Yeah." He said, "The whole car shakes?" She said, "Yeah." "You ever worry that you're going to lose control of the vehicle?" "No." He goes, "See, that's the thing, ma'am. This pilot has complete control over everything." He goes, "And ma'am, as a Catholic priest, I also believe that when it's your time to go, that's the one thing you don't have control over, right? So when it's our time, when we're called home to meet our Father, we don't have control over that." And he said she was visibly calm after that. She relaxed, she smiled, she said, "Thank you so much, Father, I appreciate that." And then he looks at her and he goes, "You know, the one thing I do worry about is what if today's the pilot's time to go?" Powerful lesson in there. What I want to talk to you all about today is, when is our time, right? Now, I'm not talking about our final days, because let's be honest, there's a lot of fear in this world right now, right? There's fear of, there's war and rumors of war. There's talks about this being the end times. We're not even going to go down that rabbit hole today. That's a whole separate sermon that we could talk about. But what I do want to talk about is, as conservatives, when is our time? We are getting the shit kicked out of us in the culture war. Absolutely kicked out of us. We have our children are being groomed and indoctrinated in our school districts. We have open borders. We have a fentanyl crisis. We have everything going wrong with this country. And I saw the looks on some of your faces when I said the word shit. The truth is that some people were more offended by me saying the word shit than they are about what's going on in society these days. That is the culture war. That is just the very beginning of how we are under attack. So I should give you a little bit of background on me. I'm a Christian, father of 4 little girls, 9, 7, 4, and 2. I'm totally outnumbered. I'm married to a woman that is way out of my league. Just an absolutely incredible woman. My business advisor, Lori, is in the back of the room. Can you wave hi to everybody? My business partner. And we have a number of different companies that our focus is how do we give glory to God, how do we serve this country, and how do we create a legacy for our children. Far too many businesses, including and especially, frankly, in the conservative space, are not building companies for legacy. They're building companies to sell companies. And that is one of the main reasons why we are losing. We are losing culturally, we're losing economically, we're losing spiritually, because we're no longer building to have something to pass down generation to generation. As a Christian conservative millennial in the People's Republic of Connecticut, I've basically been a unicorn for years, right? There are like 4 of us. And so I think it's important to share with you how I don't fit in when it comes to dads. So my wife, love her to death, way outside of my league. She forced me to go to this party. And it was a kid's party, right? Because that's what you got to do as a dad. Sometimes you got to man up and you got to go. And I was like, honey, I don't think I'm going to like these dudes. And she was like, yeah, I understand. But so we get there and we decide we've got a code word. And the code word, I think, was like watermelon. So if she came up to me and said watermelon, or I went up to her and said watermelon, it's time to go. So we get there, kids go off and play. My wife goes to meet the other moms. I go up to meet the other dads. And immediately, I see this group of dads, right? Like the table's right here. Group of dads standing around, and I hate them, just immediately. Because you got the first dude, it's middle of summer, it's like 100 degrees, and he's got a polo, and it's buttoned all the way up, top button. Next dude, he's got a pink polo on, and he's got the collar popped. So I really hate that guy. Like, I mean, he had to put down his soy latte, I think, to shake my hand. Then you've got the dude with the skin-tight khaki shorts with a pink sweater tied, middle of summer, pink sweater tied around his waist like he's on Cape Cod. So I go up to these guys, and I was like, what's up, dads? And they were like, hey, what's going on? And one of the guys is like, yo, we were just talking about all the crazy shit that we do. I'm like, maybe I called this one wrong, right? So they're like, you do crazy stuff? I was like, yeah, I'm like, we're dudes. This is what we do. It's part of our DNA. One of the guys is like, what do you do? I'm not playing this game. I was like, well, what do you guys do that's so crazy? So the first guy's like, bro, we're into crypto, but our wives don't know that we do crypto. I'm like, now I'm in trouble. So the second guy's like, oh, bro, listen, poker night every Tuesday, we get hammered. And I'm like, oh, I'm totally screwed when this thing comes around to me. Third guy's like, dude, bowling night, Friday night's bowling night. So then they look at me and they're like, what about you? And I'm like, whatever, I might as well just own it, right? As my business partner Lori always tells me, own your shit. So I was like, I do some really cool man stuff. Like I get to travel around with one of these TV shows that I'm on. It's called Real Man TV. They were like, whoa, like what do you do on Real Man TV? I was like, well, we do things like a wild boar hunt out of choppers in Texas in the middle of the night, high-speed ziplining across the Grand Canyon, Corvette Lamborghini racing. My next episode, I'm going to actually be jumping out of a tree onto the back of a wild boar and spearing it and then bleeding it out, and then we're going to cook it. And then we're actually going out with the star of Naked and Afraid. She's an Army veteran. Her husband and I made knives together with a combat vet. And then Amber is going to take us out from Naked and Afraid, and we're going to hunt out boa constrictors, and then we're going to wrestle alligators and kill the boas and cook those too. And these dudes are all just looking at me like this. And I'm like, watermelon, watermelon. But, many people think that because I'm now, I hate to admit it, but I'm technically, I guess, a middle-aged white dude, that, that makes me a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, an Islamophobe, a bigot, all these things, right? And the reality of it is that if you look at my group of closest friends, they're probably everything that you're told that I would hate, right? So my buddy Josh, big black Army Ranger, strongest dude you will ever meet in your life, just an absolute monster. First time I ever saw this guy, we're at the gym. He comes back from a month off of the gym because he dislocated his shoulder. Dude sits down on the incline bench press, 495 pounds for 10 reps. Throws it up like he's warming up. Unbelievable. So then he looks over, and he goes like this to me. So I take out my headphones, the big dude, and he points at my bag. Now my bag's covered in patches. let's go Brandon, FJB, make communism illegal again. I've got all the patches, right? And he goes, is that your effing bag? I turn into like a prepubescent boy, right? I was like, yeah. He goes, I'm glad to see you're one of us. I was like, whoa, dude, you're one of us? He was like, what, man? You think because I'm a black guy in Connecticut, I'm a Democrat? I'm like, well, yeah, bro. Like, that's a pretty safe assumption. He was like, we're going to be best friends. So Josh and I, the thing that we have in common is that we weren't raised to judge based on what you look like, right? Like, we judged, but it was whether or not you were a piece of garbage, not whether you were black or white or Hispanic or Asian or anything like that. And so Josh and I have the kind of relationship that makes liberals extraordinarily uncomfortable. So Josh and I are flying Southwest out to Texas. He's my co-host now on Real Man TV. So every time Josh and I fly together, there's always one empty seat on Southwest, and it's right between us. One empty seat, it's always between Josh and I. So sure enough, we're flying out to Texas. Everyone's boarding. We're right up front. All around us, you got these white liberals with their double masks on. Every time. I mean, they never stopped wearing those masks. So I look at him, I'm like, bro, there's gonna be one empty seat again on this flight. You just watch, man. It's right between us. He was like, no, dude, you think so? I'm like, I'm telling you. Sure enough, guys, one empty seat on the entire flight. Now again, Josh and I, we like to make people, especially liberals, extremely uncomfortable. So he looks around and he goes, man, I gotta tell you, I could really kind of get down with this systematic racism shit. I just didn't know it was gonna be all these white liberals who were doing it. And people are so uncomfortable, right? They're like adjusting their double masks, they're looking away. And I was like, bro, if I had known this was all it took to get an empty seat next to me, I would have bought one of you guys years ago. And he's roaring, right? And he's hugging me and I'm hugging him. And when it came time to get off that plane, man, these people in their masks, I don't think they could have possibly gotten off any faster. Then you've got my buddy Ali back there. Ali, can you wave to everybody? So Ali is a Muslim from Pakistan. I'd ask him to tell you all what makes him tick, but I think, the vest probably gives it away. And so Ali and I, we had a big group of guys together in Granby, and we were talking about everything going on in the schools, and he's telling his backstory, right? He was like, people don't know me, man. They don't know what I've gone through. They don't know my backstory. They don't know the challenges that I faced. They don't know where I'm from. And one of the guys says, well, where are you from? I said, oh, Al-Qaeda training camp. And you should have seen the looks on these dudes. People are so uncomfortable when you break the norm and make people realize that we're just two dudes. We're a couple of dads. Josh and I are a couple of dads. We're all in the same fight. And so I own, as he mentioned, America's most patriotic marketing agency. The snowflake test went viral in 2017 because, frankly, I was sick and tired of hiring whiny and entitled snowflakes. So the question, 30 questions, short answers, essay style, things like, what does America mean to you? How do you feel about the police? How do you feel about guns? We do a lot of work in the firearms industry. When was the last time you cried and why? I think my personal favorite was, you're sitting in Starbucks, having a cup of coffee. Someone runs in, hands you a gun, and says in 30 seconds, someone's going to come in and start shooting. What happens next? Well, it's a trick question. Real Americans don't drink Starbucks. So the test went viral. We got 40,000 emails in 1 week, 10,000 job applications. I had like 3 job openings. It was insane. Fox and Friends First, Varney and Company, Louder with Crowder, Adam Carolla, Kennedy. Just all the big shows, and it was a blast. But what that said to me, that outpouring of support, said to me that everybody in America is sick and tired of whiny and entitled snowflakes. So flash forward, we announced, my background was in TV. I was a producer of news and special projects for years. I loved what I did. I loved being able to afford to eat more. And then I get sent to a training program in St. Petersburg, Florida, and they taught us how to make cops look bad. Most of my friends and family were in law enforcement, and I was like, I got a real problem with this. This wasn't how I was raised. This wasn't what my value set is. And so that was the beginning of the end of leaving TV. And I vowed that when I started my own company, I knew how to market. I didn't know the first damn thing about running a business at that point, but I said, when we get to the point where we're successful, we are going to donate $500,000 in services to tell the stories behind the uniforms, and we did. So we announced the campaign. The first video that we did was in Manchester, Connecticut, with the chiefs of the police and fire department, all of their officers, firefighters. Video went crazy viral, 3 million views in 24 hours. So we got the chiefs on Fox and Friends, Ainsley Earnhardt, interviewing them, who made this video. So they talk about us and our campaign. Well, you would think that that would be amazing exposure, right? It was just the opposite. We were inundated with fake one-star reviews, hundreds of them, because Antifa found out about it and about to shut us down and put us out of business for supporting pigs and killers and Nazis. So I had a small management team at that point, and they said, Kyle, what are we going to do? I said, there's really only one option. There's only one thing we can do. They said, we're going to kill the campaign, right? I said, no, we're going to double the donation and tell them all to kiss our American asses, because when you double down on your values, you win every single time. So I instructed my team to go respond to those one-star reviews by trolling the trolls. And then we took screenshots of their responses. We put it up on my public figure page on Facebook, which had like 80,000 followers at that point. And then we had thousands of people go leave 5-star reviews after they got fired up. And that is how the West was won, because we owned our shit, we embraced our values, and we did not back down. And we are in a state, ladies and gentlemen, where our party of Republicans has sold their souls, but not just in this state, across the entire nation. There's a very big difference right now between being a Republican and being a conservative. And to be crystal clear, I am not a Republican. I might be on paper for the primary, but I am a biblical conservative who puts biblical principles first. So it was during this time that the owner of Law Enforcement Today contacted me, and he said, listen, I think I could help you out to achieve that goal and to gain greater reach. And I said, well, what's the reach of your platform like? He goes, well, how the hell should I know? I said, I thought you own it. He goes, yeah, but I'm a cop, man. I don't really have any idea what I'm doing. I said, can I take a look? He goes, yeah, are you going to screw anything up? I said, no. So I went in, I said, dude, you're reaching 25 million people a month. He goes, is that good? I said, yeah, that's really good. He goes, you think we do something with that? I said, yeah, dude, we could do a lot of something with that. And so flash forward about 2 months, he asked me to be his national spokesman. I said, hey, I think you missed the part where I'm not a cop. He goes, no, that's why I want you to do it. I said, I'm not tracking. He goes, you can run your mouth and no police department could fire you. I was like, roger that. So started doing that, and then I took over in 2019 as the executive director, still running the marketing agency. The agency's been doing extraordinarily well. But as the executive director, I oversaw us going from, in the height of the riots and the lockdowns and everything, we were hitting over 100 million people per month through the platform. Because we believe that this whole defund the police movement is BS, and I'm going to dive into that a little bit more later. But we believe that when you tell people for years, hey, you don't need guns, the police will protect you. And then they're like, fooled you suckers, we're going to get rid of them too. That's the direction that society is moving right now. And so the owner decided last year in January that he wanted to focus on his remaining days in law enforcement. He's approaching 40 years right now. And so he said he was going to shut down the platform and just close the company. And I was like, dude, you can't do that. Like, who else is going to be a voice for these guys? I mean, I've personally sat down with and interviewed over 1,000 surviving spouses and children of officers killed in the line of duty. Hundreds and hundreds of wounded officers. Nobody was going to tell their story. So my wife and I decided to kind of jump on that grenade, and we acquired the platform. We closed on it on July 4th of last year because America. And then on July 6th, our biggest competitor, which was almost 4 times our size, contacted me and said, hey, you interested in acquiring us? And I thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. And so in October, we closed on the acquisition of Blue Lives Matter, Police Tribune, Law Enforcement Family, Law Enforcement for Life, Mike the Cop's YouTube page. It is the largest police news outlet in the world now, bar none. Collectively, we have over 3.3 million followers on Facebook. Over 400,000 LinkedIn subscribers, over 600,000 YouTube subscribers. All our databases combined are almost a million email subscribers, a couple 100,000 each on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. And so we are doubling down on telling the stories of those who serve and protect. But for those of you right now who are like, I don't know how I feel about the police still because they were enforcing these unconstitutional mask mandates and stuff like that, roger that, and we're with you. Because I'll tell you what, there's not a single good officer that I know that will stand behind a bad cop or will stand behind someone who's enforcing an unconstitutional mandate. And if you guys don't believe me, look at what's going on in Texas right now. Yeah. Right? So I've been spending a tremendous amount of time, been spending a ton of time on the border, and the border crisis is extremely, extremely real. But I want to put a pin in that for a second, because I know a lot of you, even beforehand, were asking me about, like, first of all, like, who are you and how'd you end up here? Well, they wanted me to talk about the school stuff. And I think that's important context before I go into the national side of things, because everyone here, well, most people here are Connecticut residents. So last May, I was in Delray Beach, Florida. Lori and I were putting on a private summit focused on cancel culture and the parallel economy. So I was out there with, some of you probably know who Bo Snerdley is. His real name is James Golden, Rush Limbaugh's producer, good friend of mine. Kevin Sorbo, the original Hercules, and his wife Sam, who's a huge Christian family focused on the homeschool movement. Just some amazing, amazing people. And so here we are talking about cancel culture and the war on our culture and our constitutional values. And while I'm out there, I get a text from a guy up in Connecticut, back home we live in North Granby, and he said, "Hey, did you see what the schools just did?" Nope. What did they do this time? He goes, well, it's Pride Month, as you know, and the principal stood in front of a big transgender flag for morning announcements, which gets streamed into all the classrooms. And she made the kids watch a video that was about a minute long. And in that video, kids were talking about, well, I'm a boy, but I feel like a girl. I'm a girl, but I want to be a boy. I get to choose what I'm going to do. I get to call the shots. I'm a they, them. They didn't talk to any of the parents about this. And then that was right around the same time that in the 4th through 6th grade, they sent out puberty kits, including maxi pads and tampons to all the boys as well. And I'm sure many of you know the state law in Connecticut that has maxi pads and tampons dispensed in all the boy bathrooms as well, because that makes sense. So I get back and I post about it. Now, I got kicked out of a lot of the Granby groups years ago. That's what happens when you're a conservative and they're run by a bunch of liberal Karens. So I posted in one of the groups and said, did anybody know about this? Did they alert the parents and give the parents an option to pull the kids out of that or to exclude them from it? And everybody flipped out because nobody knew. They had no idea what was going on. This wasn't something that was discussed in advance. And so all these parents start calling the media. So I land on a Sunday night. Monday morning, I'm getting blown up by all the Connecticut media outlets. You got to go on, you got to go on. Now, I've done a lot of media stuff over the years, right? Thousands of interviews, but I've always left my kids out of stuff because we believe in protecting them as much as we could. So I was like, sorry guys, I'm not doing any media on this. Like, this isn't about me, it's not about my business, it's not about my story, and I really want to protect our kids. So then I got the call from Fox 61 saying, hey, we have 13 liberals who are willing to talk in support of this video, and not a single conservative parent is willing to speak out about it because they're afraid that they'll get fired from their jobs. They're afraid they'll get attacked in their community. So we're just letting you know, we're giving you a last chance on this. Do you want to do it? So I told my wife, and she was like, we got to do it, because at the end of the day, we have to put our faith first, right? We have to put our ability to protect our kids first, but being conservative Christians, we believe that we have to protect all kids, not just our own. And so if not me, then whom, right? So I was like, all right, let's go. So I did it. I was very calm. I just spoke facts, talked about what happened, the experience, how this was unacceptable to our family, and how this for us was the straw that broke the camel's back, and we were going to pull our kids and homeschool them. Well, then the attacks began, right? So I did all the local media and then Fox and Friends, and that's where I announced that we were pulling them and homeschooling them. Breitbart, Newsmax, Christian Broadcast Network, Dennis Prager, like all the shows. We got threats of having our house swatted. My favorite was when I was told, you need to understand that there's a difference between a pedophile and a minor attracted person. Yeah, If we weren't recording, I would tell you what I think the punishment should be for either of those. But this is what's going on. Correct, after a fair trial. By your peers, all of us. So the media went nuts. The schools were extremely upset. And then I pulled a page out of the old TV Guy playbook, which I highly recommend and encourage every single person in this room to do, which is a little thing called FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act. So I started, first of all, I alerted our community as to who the incoming superintendent was. She was from Glastonbury. She made all sorts of waves by bringing in a DEI director and talking about how all kids there are sexist and racist and blah, 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 blah. Allowed books with graphic porn to be put in the school libraries, doxed the parents who exposed what was going on there. I mean, it was bad. The Republicans in Granby now Granby is a very conservative, well, was a very conservative community. People didn't know. And the thing is, guys, if this was happening in my conservative community, my little like redneck country community, you don't think it's happening in your liberal towns around here? It's happening everywhere. We're seeing it all over the place. So we started dropping FOIA requests, just asking, are these books in the library? Where's the communication regarding this? Well, the superintendent actually then brought in the attorney for the town and said she was no longer going to be answering any of my questions. The attorney turned around and he made the mistake of inviting me to a conference he was speaking at where he was speaking about FOIA requests. And I was like, I'm so grateful that you would help, because it's always good to have a refresh, right? I actually studied it extensively. I run a very large media company, so I would love to get a refresher. Just curious, are you bringing the superintendent who has a legal responsibility to answer these FOIA requests, or is she not going to? Well, they shut down all communications with me at that point in violation of the state law. But the thing is, guys, you all have the ability to do that. Every single one of you has the ability to submit a FOIA request to find out if these schools are in your school libraries. If these books are in your school libraries, if these agendas and curriculums are being pushed on students. How many people in here have grandchildren? You are like, man, you're in such a good position, and we desperately need grandparents. We desperately need dads to get off their asses in this fight, right? But guys, I need every one of these grandparents because so many parents are afraid to get in the fight because they're worried about repercussions on their kids. Yeah. And so they're scared, and I get it. I totally get it. We were pulling our kids and homeschooling them, and so we're blessed to be in a position where I could keep running my mouth, but most families aren't blessed to be in that position where they could homeschool their kids. And that is why we need the grandparents to get on the ground game in this, because you could be dropping these FOIA requests. No one's going to mess with your kid, right? Because your kid's already graduated. And so there is a war in this country for the hearts, souls, and the bodies of children. It is happening through human trafficking. It is happening through the grooming on social media. And it is happening in your community, in your schools. And so are you going to sit around and allow it to happen? Are you going to watch it happen? Or are you going to get in the fight? Because right now, we are moving rapidly towards the normalization of pedophilia. That is the end game. They are sexualizing children, and you now have states like Washington and Portland that are trying to change the definition of pedophile and sex offenders so that we don't hurt the feelings of these criminals. So, grandparents, I need you to get off your butts as well and get in the fight, please. All right, I want to dive back in now for a second to the border crisis, because everything that we had a speaker earlier today who talked about the 302,000 illegal immigrants that came across the border in December. I don't know where she is. Love you. You're wrong and didn't even realize it, and nobody knows this. Well, some people realize this, but those are the numbers of known apprehensions that came across the border. The last couple of months, I've spent extensive time on the border. Our board of advisors is the heads of the largest police groups in America, including the National Border Patrol Council, the Texas Municipal Police Association, Sheriff Lamb, Sheriff Daniels, all of the big groups. We've got the titans. And so we've been out there on patrol with these guys. We were in the air with Tucson PD. We were in the air with the DPS, Texas DPS, Department of Public Safety. They brought us into Mexico. We went onto that island that the cartels seized off the coast of the U.S. It's U.S. territory. The cartel seized it. They had to launch a full-blown amphibious assault to reclaim that island. And then they bulldozed it. We were out on the boat with them, up in the air. The number of the 302,000 that you saw, according to every one of my contacts in local, state, and federal law enforcement, and we watched it firsthand, is probably about a third of the total real number that crossed the border in December. And here's what's really scary, guys. And I'm not trying to turn this into like a freak out fest, right? I'm just going to give you the facts and the data that the mainstream media is not giving you. So if you cross the border illegally and you go up and you say, sanctuary, asylum, all right, we're going to process you. You don't have any ID, no big deal. Here's your paperwork. Here's a court date for 5 years from now. Go into the U.S. and be well. We're sending back less than 5% of people. Not only that, but you are now going to be given papers so that you can hop on an airplane domestically and go to wherever you want to go on the taxpayer dime. Oh, did anyone see the report that most federal air marshals have been removed from planes? Yes. They're on the border handing out bottles of water. It's not right-wing conspiracy theories, guys. We have federal air marshals in our group who I filmed with on the border as they handed out bottles of water. Obviously, we're not going to share their identities because, well, you can imagine what would happen to their careers. They would be done. But it's not BS. We are shipping unvetted illegal immigrants on the taxpayer dime all over the country. But so you come up, I have no way of learning your criminal record from wherever you're from. So why would you avoid declaring asylum, asking for sanctuary? Why would you go to the extent of being a got-away and avoiding that process unless you had extreme something that you were trying to hide, whether that something is a criminal record, whether you're a terrorist, a rapist, or cartel member? It's just the reality of it. So 2 to 1, guys. 2 to 1 are the numbers that we are learning about that are coming across the border. 261 OTMs in the last 90 days. That means other than Mexico. That means people from countries other than Mexico. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese nationals from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Mauritania, which is it's a terror hotbed of South Africa. They're coming across the border and they're disappearing into the U.S. We hear Christopher Wray, the corrupt FBI director, who has flat out said that before September 11th, they saw some blinking red lights, and now there are blinking red lights everywhere. You know what that is, guys? That's not Ray looking out for our country. That's Ray covering his ass so that when these attacks inevitably begin, most likely before the election, he is covered. He could say, see, I tried to warn you. I told you this was the case. And so this is all happening at the same time that you have states continue to push to defund the police, continue to take away Second Amendment rights like Connecticut. Connecticut did their best to turn me into a felon like 400 times over in the last cycle, so we moved to Florida. So now made all my guns legal again. But we have these attacks, and if you zoom out to that 40,000-foot overview, you begin to understand the existential threat that our country is facing. And it is absolutely terrifying. So for those of you who say, well, these are just innocent people who are looking for a better life, who are actively avoiding Border Patrol and covered in MS-13 tattoos and have known terror ties, but they're just coming here for a better life. All right, cool. Let's do some math. I have a giant jar of M&Ms here, right? We have 5,000 M&Ms. In that jar, 100 of them are poison. Mixed in there, you don't know which ones are poison. You don't know which ones aren't. You're going to take a handful of M&Ms. You're going to give a handful of those M&Ms to your kid. What if instead of 100, it was 50? What if it was 10? How many is an okay number, an acceptable risk for you to be willing to give your kid or take some yourself? None. So we're going to be launching a series called Every State's a Border State in partnership with Sheriff Lamb to show the impact of the border crisis on every single state. I need you to watch what's happening in Texas extremely closely because Abbott, I love DeSantis as my new governor, not as the president. But Abbott is really stepping up his game because Abbott has really kind of caved a little bit in the past, right? But now he understands, and it's not just because of the election. Everybody's saying that, I understand that, but the numbers are really what dictate this. The absolute flood that's pouring across the border, that's what has dictated his shift in policy. Just as much, if not considerably more so than the election. But the Supreme Court made this ruling saying border agents can cut the wire, right? Well, they didn't say border agents, or that Texas can't put up more of the Constantine wire. They just said Border Patrol's allowed to cut it. And so Abbott came out and said, okay, well, we're just going to double down and keep loading up more and more and more. And of course, you've got these liberal states like Connecticut and California and New York. They're like, they don't care about the law of the land. The Supreme Court weighed in on this, as did they on things like the Second Amendment and gun-free zones and student debt. So these states then turn around, despite what the Supreme Court said, and they said, well, we're just going to pass more gun-free zones. Biden said, I'm just going to waive more student debt. I can do that. And so it's kind of ironic to see all of these leftists now say, well, this is unacceptable. This is unbelievable. Look at what's happening. The law of the land and the Constitution apparently have an asterisk next to them if you're a leftist. And so watch what's happening in Texas. If anyone here is on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, because a few days ago, I posted a piece about the 10 steps to what could very well be, if it played out this way, civil war. And it is very frightening when you look at what's really happening. I want to share with you guys 2 quick stories, because I think the media has done a really great job, especially since the riots in 2020 and 2021, of separating us and dividing us. And I want to share with you guys a little bit of a story here about why our heart is so passionate about bringing our faith and bringing our support to the law enforcement community, because they are the ones who serve us and protect us, right? Like they're out there every single day. We've watched officers kiss their families goodbye and never come home to them. And so you got to bear with me to try and get through this story here, because it's tough. And especially those of you who have kids or grandkids, this is going to hit home for you too. There's this incredible former officer and veteran. His name is Matt Griffith. So we had him up at our studio last week, 2 weeks ago, and he shared the story about why he almost killed himself. And so when Matt got out of the military and he went into field training, he had an incident that really kind of hit him hard. There was a call out. There was a 21-year-old kid who wrote a long suicide note and then took his own life. And the blood washed away the suicide note, and nobody was able to read it. And he said it really hit him hard, because this kid in his last moments had something to tell, and nobody got to hear it. And so that kind of stuck with Matt. And then Matt's best friend called him up and said, hey, I heard you're back in town now. You're out of the military. And he said, yeah, man, I'm going to be a cop. Like, I'm training right now. And he said, well, what are you doing for Christmas? And he was like, dude, I'm the low man on the totem pole, right? Like, Christmas is just, I'll be working all day. So I said, bro, come on by. His name was Benny. Come on by, grab a plate, bro, meet the family. So he went over there, grabs a plate, meets little Benny. So little Benny, a little over 1.5 years old, Spider-Man, right? Little dude's always dressed up like Spider-Man, an early talker. And he looks up and he's like, you're daddy's friend. Yeah. You're a police officer. He goes, yes, I am. And he was just beaming. And he was like, that's so cool. And so, they all hang out, they have a good time. So then Matt comes off FTOs. It's her first day without having someone there training him. So he said he's doing all the things you're not supposed to do, right? He's driving around, takes off his seatbelt because he can. He makes a turn without a blinker on. And then he sits in his car and he's having lunch, and he hears tones. There's a serious call coming in. And he hears Unit 1, Unit 2, respond to this address. And he waits 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and then he goes, shit, that's Benny's address. So he flies over there, and he runs into the house, and the mom he's the first on the scene, and the mom's screaming, save my Spidey, save my Spidey. The kid went to jump while she was in the shower from a piece of furniture onto the couch and got caught on the cord for the blinds. So he cuts him down and he starts giving him CPR right away. And he's working on him for a minute, and then he gets a breath And he says, I did it. I saved him. And it was the kid's last breath. And he said to this day, he kind of feels like little Benny is part of him because of that. So they're taking little Benny away, and he said he looked and all he could see were the scratch marks on the wall of where little Benny tried to get down. And that stuck with him because he said, I waited 30 seconds. What if I had gone sooner? And so Matt began to spiral, right? And he went through some real tough times. He just couldn't shake it. And flash forward, and you guys will be able to watch this whole interview. We're launching in a couple of weeks. He decided that he was going to take his own life. And he's a dad. He had kids. And so he put together the soundtrack of his life. And he was in his car, and he was listening to the music, and he had his gun in his hand, and he put his phone on Do Not Disturb. And at midnight, Matt was going to take his own life because that 000 had personal meaning to him. And it's a couple minutes to midnight, and out of nowhere, his phone rings. Scares the crap out of him because it was on Do Not Disturb. He almost shoots the gun. He picks up, and it's Benny. Hey man, what's up? And he goes, what are you doing right now? And he goes, I'm just taking care of some stuff. He goes, why don't you come over and have a beer? And he's like, no man, not tonight. I got some stuff to take care of. And he said, no man, why don't you come on over and have a beer? He goes, maybe tomorrow, Benny, maybe tomorrow. And so Benny stops and he gets real quiet, and he said, Matt, I just want you to know I love you. And it's not your fault. And whatever tunnel you're in right now, whatever shit you're in, there's light at the end of that tunnel. And so Matt decided after that, he hung up, and he said, well, if today's a good day to die, then tomorrow is too. And the next day he said, you know what? If today is a good day to die, then tomorrow is too. And he repeated that, and that's what got him through every day for several months. And then he decided to use every day he had to start making a difference in someone else's life, to start doing something for someone else. And then his mantra changed to, if today's a good day to help somebody, then tomorrow is too. If today's a good day to help someone, then tomorrow is too. There are Matts in this room right now. There are Matts who are in each of our lives, who are in law enforcement, who are veterans, who are in your family, who are EMTs, or who have just gone through some serious shit. And guys, we have dealt with the last 4 years of insanity, the mental health crisis that has impacted every single person in this room, whether you realize it now or not, is a growing crisis. But think about what that's doing to our kids. Now combine these sweet, innocent little freaking angels who should just be allowed to learn English and math and science, and now push on them everything that the left is pushing on them while they are in their most vulnerable state. We are blessed to have men like Matt, officers every single day, veterans every single day who are willing to stand up and fight, and who are willing to put everything on the line and write a blank check to this country, to all of us, payable up to and including their lives. And we allow them to be threatened, attacked, demonized in the media every single day. And so my hope, everybody, is that the takeaway from this is that we have a much bigger picture that we need to look at if we're going to start winning elections, right? We need to connect with people on a very deep, very personal, very emotional level. We need to fight back on the media narrative that you're black, I'm white, you're Pakistani, I'm an old white dude, you're a woman and I'm a dude, you're old, I'm young. Well, I'm not young. We need to fight back on that narrative because they are kicking the shit out of us in the culture war. So my hope is that you understand that the way that they have won elections and the way that they will continue to win elections is by dividing us, dividing every single person in this room. With that, everybody, I'd like to, if you could all bow your head for a second, I just want to end in a moment of prayer. Father God, so grateful for the opportunity to speak in front of all of these people. I thank you for all of these men and women, for bringing them into this room, for bringing them into the fight. Lord, we know that if not us, then no one else is going to get into this fight, and we ask you to be with us and guide us as we become your warriors in our community, that we fight for truth, righteousness, that we fight against evil, that we declare that Satan has no dominion over us, that we stand next to our children, that we stand firm to our beliefs. Lord, we ask you to protect our families, protect our minds, Put your armor upon us every single day and help guide us into battle so that we can return this America, this great country, to the biblical principles that it was founded upon. Lord, I ask you to just protect these men and women and their families and guide us every single day. Amen. I love you all. God bless you all. God bless America.